Hey everyone, how's it going? Brian here. And today I wanted to do an episode a little bit about what I see people making a bit of misunderstanding in sea freight in the context of China to the US. And this is for people that have been manufacturing just a little while in China or for a very long time. Because a lot of people look at sea freight as a very binary thing, there's only one option. But actually there's a lot of options when you look at shipping your product from China to wherever it is by sea. And so today I'm going to go through a few of your options and also give you a few tips that I think might be helpful to your business to either optimize it or reduce the amount of cash that you need to run it. So yeah, I hope you find it helpful, and here we go. So the first is to tell you a little bit about why some ships are faster than others. So the first reason is that some ships simply have a more direct route from the origin port to the destination port. And so what you might not know is that when you book a sea container, the ship might go from one port, let's say in China, to another port in China, to a port in Korea, and then to your destination port. Or it could go from China to another US port, let's say Seattle, and then Oakland, and then LA, which might be your destination port. And so this type of ship is obviously going to take a lot longer than a direct shipment from, let's say, Shenzhen to LA or Shanghai to LA direct. So that's one of the things that affect the speed. The second is the amount of times that your container gets rejected at the origin terminal. So what a lot of people might not know is these container ships, they often overbook the amount of containers that will be on a certain sailing route. And the reason is a lot of containers will be booked, but they won't make it to the port in time to get on the ship. And so they want to make sure that their ship is full, just like an airline might overbook seats on your flight. And so a lot of the faster, a bit more premium and more expensive shipping lines will not overbook their ships as much as the cheaper ones do. And therefore, it's way less likely that your container gets rejected at the origin terminal and needs to be scheduled on the next boat that leaves. And the last kind of point is just the companies have different scheduling of the ships, and the higher premium ships will actually leave a little bit of room. They won't, schedule the boats to be so tight in terms of time frame, and so it's very uncommon that they are delayed. But a lot of the cheaper, less expensive ships, they will schedule a lot of these boats with extremely tight timelines, which inherently makes them delayed almost always. Okay, so now you have a little bit of idea of why ships are different, and I'm going to go into two of the fast boats that we use shipping from the China to the US. And the first is the Matson CLX. This is an express line out of Shanghai to LA. You can get your product picked up between 15 and 20 days in the US after the boat departs from China. And the reason is because they actually run, first of all, a direct line, so it doesn't stop anywhere in between, to LA. The second is they have their own terminal in the US, and so they can schedule their ships to unload first before others. They manage the terminal themselves. And the second is the off-site spot at the container yard. They own a portion of the company that manages those container yards where their ships arrive. And so they can have that company put their containers in an area where it's easier and quicker for the containers to be picked up from the port and dropped back off after they're unloaded. And so these are kind of the reasons why people pay a lot more for that Matson line going out of Shanghai. And the second ship that we use is the ZIM. The ZIM leaves out of Shenzhen, South China, and goes direct to LA. And this is also an express boat where you can get your goods picked up after a ship departure between 20, typically, some people do it a little quicker, 18 to 25 days, let's say. And the reason why they're quicker is because they rarely will reject your container. They have a direct route to LA from Shenzhen. And the last is that they manage the port side in the US much more efficient so that your container can get picked up from the port much quicker. And so if you're in a rush and you want to get your products to market faster in the US, we recommend those two shipping lines to ask your forwarder the next time you ship. And so we also use some regular ships, typically EMC, Costco, and Evergreen. And these are kind of your standard speed ships. We like to use them because they're relatively stable and they reject our containers not that often. And of course, there's lots of other shipment companies that you can choose. You can always ask your forwarder which boat your product is being put on. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a few tips on how you can use this information to optimize your supply chain. So the first is simple. It's ask your forwarder if they do offer these services, and if you're in a need to ship to the US faster, get quotes for those. Especially as we come towards Christmas and Q4, you might want to get your stuff a little bit earlier to the US, but not want to spend the money on air freight. So the fast boats are a great alternative to doing that and not having to spend a bunch of money to air freight your things to the US. Also, ask your forwarder if they can, ship direct to Amazon so you can avoid deconsolidating your freight at a 3PL in the US and then shipping it onto Amazon. The forwarder is going to be a lot cheaper to forward it onto Amazon than it would be to find a separate warehouse to help you do that. The next is to consider using the fast boat to reduce the amount of cash that you need to use for inventory in your business. And by that I mean, if you always ship the fast boat, sure, you're going to pay a little bit more in shipping, but you might be able to order more often and less quantity from your factory each time. And that will lower the amount of cash burden that you have to manage those products in your business. And so you can use the extra cash to obviously either pay yourself more or to invest in other parts of your business, which might be, or other products that you want to develop, which might help you grow the business faster, of course. The next thing that we like to give people an idea is store your inventory in China and ship from China directly to Amazon. And so this will kind of cut out that 3PL in the US where you can incur a lot of cost. And now that shipping times are improving and you have the fast boat option, we think it's a viable option for Amazon sellers. Or at least if you do ship full containers to the US and half of it needs to go directly to Amazon and half of it needs to go to a 3PL that you use, we would recommend that you have the forwarder split that up and send half of it to the FBA and then half of it to your 3PL, because you're going to save time and money having your forwarder direct it on directly to Amazon rather than sending it first to your 3PL, deconsolidating, and then sending it on to Amazon. There's two other things that we recommend. One is if you have to ship your products to many parts of the US, let's say the East Coast and the West Coast, and you have a full container of goods, we recommend considering to split that container into 2 LCL shipments so you can reduce the amount of ground transportation in the US, because that costs a fortune. So if you have to say, let's say, for an example, you have to ship part of your product to an LA area Amazon FBA warehouse and a New Jersey area FBA warehouse, and you have a full container, it's best to consolidate part of it to LA port, part of it to New York, and then you have a very short domestic delivery to the Amazon warehouse. Instead of shipping an entire container to LA and then taking half of that container and trucking it across the country. Because that trucking fee is probably going to cost a lot more than you save in bringing a full container in. And then lastly, we know a lot of people use maybe air freight for all their shipments because their products are either very small, they might be accessories, watches, electronics, with a very high price point. And so the cost to do air freight per unit is not that high. But we think if your volume is high enough that over the full year, it will cost a lot more than trying the fast boat. So the fast boat could lower your cost by up to 2/3 of your shipping, and it might be just a little bit longer than shipping air freight. And so if you have a high volume where you're shipping tens of thousands of dollars in air freight a year, that savings is an easy way to put more money in your pocket. So yeah, these are some of the tips we have. I hope you like learn something or can think a little bit about shipping from China differently than you have in the past. And if you have any questions, remember to leave them in the comment section. If you like the video, like us and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.